Hi, this is Audra Dahl, and I'm so glad you're here to join me on this side of the couch. In this episode, you'll hear me reference Matthew 19:24, and I would like to make a correction to that. I spoke wrongly on this, and I want to make a correction before we get started into it. In Matthew, it talks about Jesus saying that it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to go to heaven. I think what it really is talking about, I've done a little bit more research, just fact checking myself on this, and there's really no hard and fast answer, but there is one that seems to be more compelling than the rest, and that is that there is a narrow, like after hours gate into Jerusalem. It's like the little door inside the giant door that lets you into the city. It is so narrow that for a camel to be able to go through that small door, he literally has to get down on his knees and also be removed of the load that he was carrying. So if you think about it, what Jesus is saying is that the way to approach or come to the Lord is on our knees, humbly on our knees. And also we have to remove any burdens that we are prioritizing over God in order to get to heaven. Having said that, I just wanted to make that clarification, and let's get started on the podcast. So today we have with us Kristen Leathers, who is one of my cousins that I dearly love. She is so much like me. It's a little weird sometimes, a little fantastic sometimes.
Yeah.
And because sometimes talking to her is just like having a great conversation with myself, which, they're way better than actual conversations with myself. But nonetheless, we every time we talk, I think we find something new that we have in common, and we are old right now, it feels like. So it's been a lifetime of great conversations.
That's good.
So she is also a counselor in North Carolina. Tell everybody real quick where you practice in case they are listening in North Carolina.
Oh, great. Yeah. I live in Mount Airy, North Carolina, which is a tiny little town, population 11,000, but it is not where I practice. I practice in Winston-Salem. So it's about an hour south of us. And I commute there twice a week and then see clients virtually one day a week and part of the Barnabas Center in Winston. And so fantastic practice. And I 100% have gotten more from them than I've given. So I'm real grateful to be a part of it.
Do you want to throw a phone number, email address, website address out there real quick?
You could. The Barnabas Triad. Ooh, I should know. You could just Google the Barnabas Center of the Triad and you're going to get to where you need to be. There are 4 of us who practice there, 2 women, 2 men. And it's a relational counseling practice is what we call ourselves. So emphasis on relationship, how we relate to God, how we relate to ourselves, and how we relate to other people is kind of how I frame it, as those being the most determining factors of who we are and how we move about the world. And I've loved it. That practice lines up with me and who I am to a T. So it's been a real gift.
Awesome. And it kind of lends into what we were going to talk about today, disappointment with God.
Yep, that's right.
And I think you said the phrase pedestrian disappointment. Let's start there because I'm curious about that one.
Yeah, that's funny. I just made that up on the spot. So I'm going to give it a real-time definition. Yeah, I think that a lot of believing people, a lot of Christian people probably have a category for suffering and how God interacts with that, maybe. But that kind of feels some more acute or intense or big. And we're not usually living kind of in that space all the time. And so when I say pedestrian disappointment, I mean everyday disappointment. Not I had this hard diagnosis, but everyday disappointment. A friend, I went for a walk with a friend and she did not listen to me well, and I felt kind of missed by her. Your spouse says a harsh word to you in the kitchen. You bend over backwards for your kids and they give you attitude, right? There's just all this kind of everyday stuff to me
So it's like
that,
little d disappointment.
well, there you go. There you go. Little
Okay.
D disappointment. Yeah, everyday stuff. And I do really believe that what we do next, meaning how we cope, what our strategies are, has a massive impact on the quality of our life, the quality of our relationships. I'm going to cite. I have learned so much by working at the Barnabas Center, and one of the kind of pillars we stand on is that we have good desire, wrong strategy. So you want to be seen and known and helped and loved, but you don't know how to get there. And so you develop a strategy to get that. And the strategy oftentimes is counterproductive, maladaptive.
Mhm.
So good desire, wrong strategy. And then when we run up into disappointment, again, little d, oftentimes it reveals what our strategies are, how we go about getting back to a feeling of being loved and safe. And so I think God is doing something really special in all of that. If we were to only put him in a category that God wants to really show up in an intimate way in our big D disappointment and our big suffering, I think we're going to miss a sweetness of how he wants to know us in the really mundane parts of our lives. I think that's a gift he's offering us. So it's been a huge area of interest for me as a person, certainly in my practice with clients. I feel like we all end up there somehow in our sessions, no matter what they're coming in with. We end up talking about that.
I think so much today, it seems like the goal is to not feel pain, not have any kind of suffering, not have any disappointment, not have any of the negative stuff.
That's right.
Miss the point of why it's so stinking important to actually have it.
Right. That's right. Yeah, I don't know that there's ever been a time where we have more options to dodge the feeling of disappointment. I mean, we can just create 1,000 workarounds to not have to feel it and not have to feel discomfort of any kind. I mean, the reality is we were not made for this world, and so it's a really uncomfortable place to live.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do we do with that? Like, how do we soothe that discomfort in a way that honors God and honors ourselves and our bodies and honors our relationships? But yeah, I would love to hear what you mean by that when you say why it's so stinking important to have.
Because I think through all of those things is when we grow. If you think about a woman who is pregnant
Right.
and she has this baby growing inside of her,
Mm.
but at some point, this baby has to come out.
Right.
And if this baby doesn't ever come out, it will eventually die.
That's right.
So it has to go through not just the mom, the pains of labor birth, but it's not comfortable for that baby either. There's no way it can be. I don't know that I've ever heard anything that says, oh, yeah, that baby doesn't have any pain, or this
Right.
baby has a lot of pain through childbirth. But let's think practically about what this baby is going through in
Mm.
order to be born. It's being squeezed. You can't squeeze a uterus and squeeze abdomens and labor pains and not squeeze that baby.
Right.
You can't come through a pelvis and have your head be misshapen
That's
and
right.
not be in pain.
That's right.
And so he has to be born and go through pain in order to keep growing.
Mm. That's right. Yeah, and you and I feel in total agreement about that. And I'm curious if we could have X-ray vision into the hearts of the people kind of in our everyday world, if we would see a desire to grow and be formed like that. I feel like that's a little bit fundamental. Like God has really made us to be formed into who he originally created us to be. That's sort of the whole story arc, is like I came into the world malformed, spiritually, emotionally, and there'll be experiences in my life, in my childhood, for everybody that will kind of both aid that malformation and sometimes help it along. But the whole arc to me is being reformed and learning to trust God in that. Um, but that's got to be a value somewhere, to participate in that. And I'm curious, for when folks want to dodge disappointment and get out of the feeling that it brings up, I have some questions around whether they want to grow. Is it a value to grow? I just know that there's ever been a time in my life when I have been in intense growth, come out the other side and look back and thought, I wish I didn't grow like that. Like you just never, I don't experience regret around it. In fact, I feel something totally different. I feel like I wouldn't trade that. Not that I enjoyed it or that I wanted again, whatever hard thing that was, but who you become on the other side of that, and then the ability to know God differently because of that formation that's the trick. That's the gift.
100% agree with that. I mean, I so firmly believe you cannot grow without pain. I mean, you even have the phrase growing pains. I just
That's
gave
right.
my granddaughter 2 nights ago Tylenol because she had growing pains in her legs because her bones are
Mm,
so fast they hurt,
that's
right?
right.
You can't get away from that. And when I look at people who come through really hard things, my daughter even coming
Mm,
through Lyme disease and living with Lyme disease will tell
right.
you she no longer wishes it to be gone on anybody else because she knows how she has grown through it,
Mm,
and she knows what it has done for her faith because it's really solidified her faith through a massive testing,
that's right. That's
right?
right.
And
We
and I would say the same thing about myself, coming through sexual abuse and I certainly lost my faith the first time around in the major testing,
Mm,
but came back to it and had another major testing through Kelsey's illness,
right.
at that time solidified it.
Mm,
And I grew in such a way that through both major trials in my life, that would not have happened without it. And I absolutely no longer wish the abuse hadn't happened to me. I mean, do I wish it on anybody? Of course not. But
that's
for
right.
me, I know it's such in healing, I know it's a part of me.
That's right.
And I'm pretty cool. So I wouldn't be that way without it.
Yeah, that's right.
And I work really well with women coming through sexual abuse
Mm,
because I know what it's like.
that's right.
And
Well,
I think it's how God has redeemed
that's
that
right.
situation for me and using it for the good.
Yep.
And none of it would have happened without a whole lot of pain in there
Mm.
and a whole lot of disappointment with God.
That's right. That's right. And I wonder if we could give some language to, like, I hear you saying I came back to it. I came back to my faith and I allowed that pain to change me and form you. How? Like, how do we give language to what it looks like to lean into that versus pulling away and numbing it or narcotizing it in some way?
Mm. For me, it was a stubbornness. I will
Okay.
not lose my faith again because I know
Mm,
what the desert feels like.
mm,
And it wasn't a place that I wanted to go back to.
mm.
And the first time I spent 10 years in the desert, and it's a very lonely
Yes.
it's a very lonely place. I don't know any better word for it than that.
Mm,
And because our deepest longing is for God, no matter what, our deepest longing is for God. And when he's not there because we don't allow him to be,
mhm.
then it's an incredibly lonely feeling that nothing else fills. And I tried a lot of other things to fill it
Sure.
and nothing worked. But through stubbornly staying on the idea of I'm not going to lose my faith again, and how do you go through this and not lose it?
Mm,
And it honestly, it looked a lot like driving to work as a counselor, a lot of mornings and pulling over at a parking lot
mm.
and screaming my head off,
That's right.
and then drying the tears
Mm.
and going to work.
So
It also
beautiful.
looked a lot of times like, ooh, sitting in session going, this is a low compassion day for me, and I need to not be here today and
Mm,
cancel my day and go
yeah.
home and work it out with God.
Mm,
It looks like
mm.
uh recognizing that I'm not seeing God work in my life because he's not working the way I want him to.
Right.
And and deciding either that means he's simply not working in my life, or I'm not seeing him the way I want to see him, so therefore I'm not seeing him at all.
That's right.
And so I made myself start looking for some sort of way that God was working in my life once a week. And every Wednesday night I had to write about it in a blog. I kept at that point. It was my journal.
So deliberate, a deliberate stubbornness.
It was, because I knew I had to be missing him working, because he wouldn't just leave me hanging dry.
That's right.
I could not believe that about God, because if I could believe that about God, then either I believe in the wrong God, or God's not who I thought he was.
Yeah.
And so I started looking, and there were little things that I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I see you, God. And there were bigger things that were like, oh, okay, I see you. And thank you for that one. And go home and write about it. And there were lots of times I reread my own writing to remind
Yes.
myself.
Yes.
Lots of times I read my own writing back. And then, because I published it, I got a lot of encouragement, which I needed. So, I mean, there were a lot of great side benefits to doing that practice, but the biggest benefit was keeping my faith.
Yeah, I hear a couple through lines in that, like one of them being a willingness to pay attention to what was going on inside of you. Like you had to know, you had to be attentive enough to your own heart, your own inner world to know I got to pull over and rage at God. I need to do that, which means being like sensitive to that, right? You got to let the nerve endings like do their thing, and then a deliberate paying attention to. So there's that paying attention, what's going on inside of you, and then a paying attention to what is God doing. I know he is doing something. How do I see it? Like, how do I squint and find what God is doing in that? Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning that you and I find ourselves having more and more in common the older we get, which is just a gift, I think. I had a moment in my car a few years ago. I was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 38. My kids were really young at the time, 8 and 6. And God and I kind of went to battle a little bit, not in a traditional way, maybe, or maybe way I didn't, it never felt like why. I don't know. That just wasn't my question. It more felt like how on earth are we going to walk through this? And what will happen to my children if I die? Those were my burning questions. And I was angry and so scared. So I have this route that I drive sometimes in my town where I know nobody's going to see me. It's like kind of a country road. And so I don't run the risk of like raging in someone, because people pass me by all, like you just in our town, I saw you in front of McDonald's, you just how it goes here.
1,000 people, you're going to know them.
You're going to know. Yeah. So I needed a little anonymity, and a country road gave me that. And I, sobbed. I was so mad and cried and raged audibly at him. And I felt like I was done. All the tears that were there for that moment had come out, and I turned onto my road, and I sensed God say to me, Kristen, I hope we meet like this again. And man, talk about attachment. I mean, the idea that I can become completely unearthed. I'm seemingly unlovable right now, hard to be with, hard to get to, unhinged, and the God who is completely good and right and just stands beside me and says, please bring me this again. Do it again, Kristen. Like,
right. That's the thing. That's why. And I've talked about this, I think, before here on this podcast of confessing to God is not telling him something that's deep, dark inside of you that he doesn't know about.
That's right.
It literally translates to agree with God, and doesn't mean agree with, you agree with what he says. It's that what you are saying agrees with what he already knows.
There you go. That's right.
And when you have that, there's a congruency or a truth that's
Mm,
between y'all,
mm,
right? And I think he will always love and value and cherish that,
that's right.
because that's when we have the deepest connection, I think, right?
Yes,
You know,
that's
and that's why I wholeheartedly believe for myself and everybody else that it is okay to be mad at God,
mm,
to be disappointed with God, and to tell him so.
yeah.
You know, my times on the side of the road raging were not just raging, they were raging at him. I will
Oh,
be
that's right.
honest.
That's right. They
And
weren't raging at
in
the start.
whatever word that came to my mind.
Yes.
Because if I didn't, then I wasn't fully confessing to
That's
God.
right.
I was holding something back, and that will always be like drinking poison and not vomiting.
That feels so good, you know? Yeah, that's exactly right. It really is. And I wonder if we could even say it with more gravity. Not only is it okay, I think it's necessary,
For sure.
right?
Absolutely.
I think it's necessary. And it's like I can imagine my own pushback, right? Like, well, but God is in control and he's sovereign and he knows things I don't, and who am I to question? And but that is not the way we talk about intimate relationships with other people, right? That is, and the other piece of that is God really does not need me to protect his reputation. Like, doesn't. He does not need me to protect him
Uh-huh.
from a bad rap. Like
Right.
that, he's never asked me to do that. And if I don't give voice to that, I mean, audibly or otherwise, but if I don't really confess, come into agreement with God about what we both know is already true, I am inevitably going to take that hurt somewhere else.
Hmm.
You have because it needs to go somewhere, right? Like, do you read any or listen to Chuck DeGroat? Are you familiar with his?
No.
Oh,
Uh-uh.
you would like him so much.
Okay.
But he goes back to the account in Genesis and talks about essentially the questions that God is asking Adam and Eve. Where are you? Who told you that? Like who lied to you?
Hmm.
And the third question, where have you taken your hunger? And the third question is beautiful, right? So we all have a hunger, and as you said earlier, like it is for God, and you like full stop. You cannot get around that. It's no one can dodge that reality, not a single person. And then so we have this hunger. Where do I take it? Right? Like they were meant to take it to him and they took it to the tree. So if I don't lean into that grief, that rage, that despair, that disappointment, big D, little d, whatever it is, I'm going to take that feeling, that hunger somewhere else. And that somewhere else can work for a little while,
Hmm.
but can ultimately just really come up dry. I mean, yeah. So like even when we like so you and I are talking, we've mentioned two big D disappointments in our conversation so far, but even in let's say a disappointment in a friendship, I feel that. I feel my hunger to be known and loved, and I feel it go unmet. So then what? What do I do next? So I've got a lot of options. I can deny that that hurt me. I can, this is more Barnabas talk, deny, despair. Ooh, there's some more. Deny, despair. I can deny that it hurt me. I can despair. Oh, no one, she'll never care about me. She never listens to me. I'm on my own. I'll never have good friends, et cetera, et cetera. Certainly can numb that hurt. There's 10,000 things at our fingertips to numb and um, imitation soothe, kind of how we're doing.
Hmm.
Other option is dependency, like every dependency on God and then on his people also, not just him. I don't think meant for us to depend on him in this kind of isolated vacuum, but him and his people. My one of my supervisors in our practice says your whole life is rigged. The whole thing's rigged to draw you back into loving dependence on God. Not just the big stuff, but the little stuff. It's all rigged. Like we came into the world dependent on him and we loved that about ourselves. Like Adam and Eve every day. Where is our God? They needed him utterly and they were not ashamed of that. It was the best thing about them. And then the world shatters. It all goes south, sideways, whatever you want to say. And we take that dependence or that hunger somewhere else. And then the story arc begins. How do I go back into loving dependence on God? And he has rigged it. He's rigged the whole system. And you can hear that two ways. I mean, that sounds like when I hear that word rigged, I might think of like a game was rigged, right? Somebody, the refs, it was rigged. And it sounds like an insidious, twisted thing. But God does get to be God. It's his call. And if he wants to orient our lives so that we come out of self-reliance into loving dependence on him, he gets to decide how he does that.
Yeah.
And I can rail against that, and that's okay. And hopefully that railing and that grieving leads me to acceptance ultimately.
It ultimately starts molding you back because you start, you see, you said you've got many paths you can take and you start going down each of these paths, right?
Mhm.
But how's it gonna, one, you try one and it fails. Okay, I'm having a bad day. I go for a bowl of ice cream. Well, that didn't do me any good.
Right. Right.
Or I had a bad day. I don't know, watched Netflix mindlessly for
Yeah. Doom scroll.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
absolutely, or doom scroll, like you said. So
Right.
all of these things, you start trying them, and then you realize at the end of it is really just God. And how do I bring it to God? How do I leave it with him?
That's right.
And everybody, I think, has their own individual way of how do I leave it with God, these kinds
That's
of
right.
things. I'm a very visually oriented person.
Mm.
And I literally visualize putting it in a box and then putting it
Uh-huh.
at the foot of the cross,
Right.
and and try to leave it there. Oftentimes I go
Mm.
pick it back up again,
Uh, Reflexively and probably unknowingly at
but
first.
absolutely,
Yeah.
it's the same thing of this is how I'm trusting you, God, and I'm putting it in this box and I'm giving it to you because you have the ultimate power. You are sovereign in all of this.
Mm.
But it's also how I forgive, the exact
Yeah.
same process. I'm giving this to you, God. I can't hold this burden. I can't go through it anymore. Here
That's
it
right.
is at the foot of the cross. Same
Mm.
thing. I go pick it up sometimes, and put it back. But it's still coming and realizing, and hopefully as we grow through life and through all of these smaller disappointments and the bigger ones, we start to go, oh yeah, I see all these other ways I can do it and all these other paths, but I've done these and
Mm.
they don't go
That's
where I
right.
want to go.
Yeah. Well, they mostly go to the desert, probably.
Exactly, and
Like
so
a
and it's big and broad.
yes.
and and so you start to rule them out a whole lot sooner.
Mm. Mm.
I don't want to do that. This
Yeah.
is where I need to go. But it's harder sometimes, and talking through all of this, it brings up that verse. I think it's in Matthew. You probably know it better than I do about going through the eye of the needle.
Oh, right.
Can you say it? I'm gonna look it up.
Easier. Are you talking about like easier for a rich man to go through the eye of a needle than to enter the kingdom of heaven?
Yes. Is that the way? Let me hang on. Let me see. I can pause my
That might have been a hybrid of two
computer.
verses. That's my specialty, mixing them up.
It is
Easy.
easier, Matthew 19:24. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter the kingdom of God.
There we go. We're so close. Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
So, in our Western view of this Bible verse, we think the eye of a needle, the actual eye of a needle, right? A little sewing needle.
Yeah.
No way
Yeah.
a camel's going through an eye of that, right? But that's not what they're talking about, actually.
Tell us.
A needle is also, when you have a fence and
Mm.
you have those kind of angle ladders that go up and over the fence that are always there out in the field,
Oh, uh-huh.
they span the thing. That's called a needle.
Oh.
And so for a camel to go through that, they have to get down on their knees.
What an image. On their knees.
On their knees
Oh, that's too good.
to go through it,
Mm.
right? And so
Wow.
we have to go
Mm,
to the Father on our knees,
mm, mm,
which is
mhm.
a submissive recognition of you are in charge of me, you are in charge of the world.
That's right.
Only with you can I do this.
That's right. I got nothing without you. Nothing.
Got nothing without you,
Mm-hmm. Mm.
right?
Had this conversation a while back. My daughter is a lot like Eric. She's like a straight shooter.
Mhm.
Like just there's a very little pretense, just like this is what it is. And it's awesome. I love it about her. I learn a lot from it. And I do not think that we're going to show up at some gate and God's going to say, "Why should I let you in?" What a terrible idea that that's how the plot goes. He's far too like creative and wild and dynamic and good for it to be that like, I don't know, predictable.
Yeah.
But I was curious because that question, like I live in the southern, like southeast Bible Belt, truly part of America. We go to a Southern Baptist church. And so that question is like kind of rings just in the background in our community and culture. Like, what would you do if God said, like, why should I give you access? And she was like stabbing at her dinner, like, oh God, I have no idea. I don't know. And I thought, man, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. It's a great heart posture because it wasn't like, oh, I could list these things, right? Like things that I would do and tell you on my own 2 feet, right? As opposed to kneeling. It's like, oh, I don't know. I got nothing except you and your grace for me. You're it. I got nothing except you. So I loved it. I loved the answer. Like I thought, yeah, girl, like number one, the honesty, so great. But also the frankness of like, oh wow, not one thing except my vulnerability, my dependence on you and who you are for me. That's a vulnerable spot to be in.
It is.
Where's your mind going?
My mind is going, I don't disagree with that at all, but I
Mm,
have a different answer.
okay, I'm ready.
My answer is, why should you let me in? Because I am made in the image of you,
Mm,
and you love me, and I love your son.
mm, that's right.
Not because of anything I've done. There's no earning it,
Mm,
but there is no going to the Father without the Son.
that's right.
And that is the testimony that we were actually just studying in life group last night in 1 John 5.
Mm,
It's the testimony is in Jesus, and Jesus is in us.
mm.
Therefore, we are saved. It's that
Sealed,
simple.
signed, sealed, delivered.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty great.
That is.
It's great news. Transforming news.
Yeah. So it's really hard, I think, to talk to people about disappointment with God
Mm,
and disappointment with other things in life, and how, all of this helps you grow and all of that kind of stuff when they're in the thick of it.
that's right. Yeah.
It's kind of like using Romans 8:28 on somebody when they're in the middle of something. It's to me, I call that a hindsight verse,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's right.
you know,
Right.
because when I'm hugely struggling with whatever, you tell me, oh, God's going to make good of this somehow. I just want to punch you. I'm gonna be the identity thief lady, and I'm gonna throw punch you,
Yeah, and that actually feels like, in some ways, the appropriate response. And what's interesting is that we can use some of these favorite scriptures as ways to really avoid our pain, right? I don't have to feel my stuff. I don't have to engage with the terrifying feeling that I might be really mad at God.
Mm-hmm.
If I just slap a verse on it,
Mm-hmm.
I can
Right.
just, I can use that to bar the door to my heart and call it trust.
Hmm.
And I just am not so sure that that's what we're doing, but I'm with you. I think that that feels like not love to me.
Yeah, I think if we want to use scriptures, I think now that it's not that I've thought about this before, but right now,
Mm.
you know, there are definitely hindsight verses like Romans 8:28. And there are definitely verses to know ahead of time,
Mhm.
like
Yeah, foresight versus
James 1 and 2, consider it pure joy, all the
right.
trials and tribulations, or
Yeah,
Romans 5, 1 through
right.
5, talks about all the things that hardship's going to do for you.
Yes,
Those things are preparation,
that's right.
right? They're preparation for the hard things for you to know and be able to trust. But in the
Mm.
hard times, I just want to know that I can trust him. I want to know God's character.
Mm.
I want to know his character.
Yeah, this is interesting. It's almost like we just created a sandwich and I have something for the middle. This
Uh-huh.
does come up occasionally with clients. And I think again, like to your point, it is not the place, I think, when someone is in the middle of pain to try and chin up, like, hey, it's okay.
Mhm.
I don't think that's love. I think you actually take them further into their pain because that's where God's waiting for them. He's
Right.
kind of out in the middle of their darkness. But you just said, you've got kind of the verses on the front end, kind of ways that we can like fortify ourselves, plan for
Mhm.
suffering, know that God will be good in it. Then there's hindsight. Um, he does all things, makes all things for good for those who love him. Okay. Then in the middle, I picture him in the bleeding woman. So it's less a verse and more a scene, right? So there's two people suffering. There's a little girl who's dying. Jairus's daughter is dying on her deathbed. It's acute. She's young. She's got her whole life ahead of her, right? And Jairus is important. And then you have a woman who's been bleeding chronically. It's not life threatening. No one knows her. She's a throwaway. What's interesting is she sneaks to the crowd, grabs his cloak, the power leaves him. She is healed. So she technically has got what she came for. She had a physical healing. But Jesus stops. Who touched me? The disciples answer classically, everyone's touching you. We're in a crowd. And he says, no, no, who touched me? And then he calls the woman in front of him and says, she says she tells him her whole story. And while he's doing that, Jairus' daughter dies. So one of the things I hear most often in sessions with clients is it's other people have it so much worse. It's not that big of a deal. When I think about this person, my suffering seems small and I feel stupid for complaining. And then I think, man, well, we got to confront ourselves with Jesus and the bleeding woman and Jairus's daughter, because if you were to put those two people in front of me and I have to pick one, who is going to be saved? Who's going to be healed? Most people would probably pick the girl. It's life-threatening. Her suffering's worse, seemingly.
Mhm.
But this woman has been living chronically alone in chronic pain and is probably in deep despair. So she needed more than a physical healing. Her heart, her
Mhm.
soul, her spirit, her mind, all of that needed to be touched.
Yeah.
Jesus seems to waste time on her. That's why I think the whole crowd was like, hurry up. Like, we got to go. And he is in no rush. And she tells him the whole story. And we have no idea how long that lasted 10 minutes, 4 hours. We don't know. But you said, what is in the middle? I just need to know that I can trust him.
Mhm.
And so, this picture of Jesus not leaving her as she worked through her story,
Mhm.
no one was more important than her. And of course, he goes and heals Jairus' daughter because he's Jesus and that's what he can do and gets to do.
Mhm.
He certainly did it in his own timing. And so I think if we confront ourselves with that beautiful, scandalous scene, does that idea that like someone else's suffering must matter more than mine, therefore I should not really pay attention to my own suffering, does that theory even
No,
hold water? I mean,
no.
it
That's
seems to melt.
dismissing that, like you
It's
said, Barnabas.
totally, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. And I'm all for perspective. Like I think perspective is really healthy.
Mhm.
But I just think when it's applied as a way to help us avoid our own pain and our own disappointment, then it's misapplied.
And seeing other people in worse situations than us doesn't actually elevate us.
Right. Right. When has that helped you?
right?
Yeah.
So, and the other thing about that story with the Jairus's daughter and the bleeding woman, I think he knew all along he was going to raise somebody from the dead, not heal from somebody from the sick.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. That's right.
Kind of like Lazarus. He waited to show up
Totally.
for Lazarus until he was 3 days dead.
That's
Right.
right.
And so it was still all within the plan, you
That's
know.
right.
But knowing that we can trust him, and maybe this is something we could do as a part two, Kristen, is the fabulous book by Henry Cloud that I'm reading right now.
Oh,
And we're
yeah.
doing it as a team training with my counseling team, called Trust.
Oh,
It talks about the 5 characteristics of trust. And I love this book, and I've already used it so much in my counseling with people. But what I'm also seeing in it is the further extension. And I don't know, I've got, maybe 20, 50 pages left. I'm wondering if he makes an extension to trusting God, because this is the
hmm,
exact stuff that we need to trust God,
hmm.
right?
Well,
More fully. And
mhm,
he talks about the 5 essentials of trust. Number one, understanding that you can trust someone when you feel your needs are understood, felt, and cared about.
mm,
Can I say that about God? He
that's
knows
good.
everything about it.
That's
And
right.
that's one of the reasons why he sent Jesus to earth, so that he can truly say, I've lived it.
That's right.
All the things I've lived it. So of course I understand,
And feel it. I think the second element you said was felt.
and felt and cared about. You bet.
That's right. Yeah. My suffering is his suffering.
Right. Number
Mm,
two, motive. You can trust someone when you feel their motive is for you, not just for themselves.
mm, that's good. That's
If
good.
God's motive was just to have people worship and adore him, he could make me without free will.
Mm,
We could be robots, and
totally.
he would get what he needs if that's all his only motive is.
Right.
But that's not what he did.
Mm,
He
mm,
created us with free will for us to choose him.
mhm.
That's for us.
More glorious. Yeah.
Absolutely. Number three, ability. You can trust someone when you feel they have the ability or capacity to guard and deliver results for what you have entrusted to them.
Mm. So they're not just a good container, they're also an advocate.
They're also an advocate.
Mhm,
Do they have the ability to handle this
mhm,
situation? Do they have the capacity to do it?
mm, hmm.
And number four, a character. You can trust someone who has the character or personal makeup needed for what you entrust them with.
Mm,
Character begins with foundational traits such as honesty, faithfulness, integrity.
mm,
Is God faithful to me? Yes.
mm,
Right. You can trust. Then number five, track record. You can
mm.
trust someone who has a track record of performing in the ways you need them to perform. That's why I needed to journal.
That's right. It was
I
your
need to
Ebenezer.
see the track record going, because for a while there, it felt like, whoop, track record's gone.
Right.
And if the
Right.
track record's gone, then all of the others start to fail too.
Mm, that's right. Mm, that's so good. It's like one of those upside down principles of the kingdom of God that to go forward, you go backwards,
Mm-hmm.
right? Forward motion requires backward perspective. So, like, you
Yeah, that's why we study
cataloging,
history.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You cataloging his faithfulness to you in your everyday life,
Mhm.
right? It's like it bolsters the heart. Like, okay, it is on me to pay attention to it,
Right.
to name it. Um, and that I think we do have to be deliberate in that. Like it's amazing how easy it is for
Mhm.
me to notice what didn't happen,
Right.
what didn't go right, what didn't go well, where someone let me down. Like that, it's like a Hawkeye. Like I don't even have to try.
Right.
But what does it look like to like, do you remember those magic eye posters?
Uh-huh.
That's what it feels like a little bit to me. Like at
That's
glance,
those
it's
3D
like,
things that you have to stare at just right
yes,
when the extra picture
yeah, they
pops
used to
out.
be in the mall, and I could do it for like a second, like
Uh,
squint just right enough, and like a cheetah pops out, you know? But it feels like that. Like if I can look at my life and my day, my everyday, normal stuff, and just squint a little bit, okay, where is he on the move? Where is Aslan on the move here?
Mhm.
It's gonna come into focus. And I think that is a skill. I think we can get better at it.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
I can sharpen my vision for that if I practice that.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. There were definite things that had I not been looking during those years with Kelsey, that I would have not considered it a God moment. You know,
Mm,
I can remember who at the hospital, um, one of the worst days,
mm,
and leaving with my son, and it was, I don't know, 10 o'clock at night or something. And we were walking out and we were in the lobby of this big hospital, 10 o'clock at night, nobody's out there, right? And I realized I don't have the right change for paying to get my car out of the parking garage.
mm.
All I had was like a $20 bill. And Aaron didn't have anything. And I'm like, what am I going to do? And I was literally just standing there going, am I going to drive through the little arm that comes down at the parking garage? What
Bust it
am I
out.
going to do?
Right.
You know? And the elevator dinged at that moment, and out walked the guy that had taken the x-rays of Kelsey that day.
Oh.
And he remembered me, and
Mm,
he saw the tears in my eyes.
mm,
And he's like, what's going on?
mm,
I said, I don't have money to get out of the parking garage. I have a 20, but I don't have anything else. And there's nothing here that's open to give me change. And it
mm.
wasn't a part of town you wanted to walk outside somewhere, at 10 o'clock at night. And he and the guy with him opened up their wallets, and they both, between the two of them, had $20 of change for me.
It's too
Is that a
good.
coincidence? Or is
No,
that God taking care of me in the moment?
that's right.
It's
That's
God
right.
taking care of me in the moment.
Mm, that's right.
And in fact, I was like, thank you so much. I can't believe that happened. And he goes, I can't either. I never have change.
Oh, wow.
And the other guy said, it's a God thing. And I said, you're right.
Oh, that's good.
So if you look for it,
Mm,
you'll
that's
see it,
that's
and
right.
give God the credit.
Mm, that's right.
Right. So I think between doing that and intentionally looking in disappointment, and then also understanding there are proper ways to lament.
Yeah. Ooh, uh-huh.
There are really bad ways to lament.
Mm,
I mean, obviously it's not a bad thing. We have a whole book of the Bible. Actually, probably a book in 3/4 between
yeah,
Lamentations and Psalms
that's right.
of lamenting to God,
Mm,
that show you that it's not a bad thing
mm,
to
that's
let
right.
God know what you think.
That's right.
And my favorite one is Psalm 22. And it's even called a cry of anguish and a song of praise.
Mm,
And it's David when he is on the run from Saul, and he is tired and worn out and skinny and just at his wits' end. And he starts out that psalm, and I do this often in sessions with people. But he starts out the psalm with, my God, why have you forsaken me? And I asked the person sitting next to me or across from me, do you think that's how he said it?
mm,
And they're like, no. I said, but that's how we always read it, isn't it?
that's right.
But how do you think he really said it?
Mm,
My God, why have you forsaken me?
that's right.
That sounds so different.
So different. Feels different in the body.
Feels different. I feel it in myself just
Yeah.
saying it that way.
Yep.
And he wasn't wrong
Right.
in what he did. And he went on to say how alone he feels.
Mm,
And then he shifts and he says, but you are the God of my forefathers.
mm,
And you, right? And he goes on and he says the history of how he knows who God is.
mm,
And then he says, yet
mm,
I am a worm of a man and despised by all. And these people are mocking me, and they're mocking you too. He's trying to incite God even against them, right?
mm,
Get mad. They're
Join
mocking you,
me. Yeah.
right? And then he goes, but you knew me when I was still in the womb. You love me. I know you do. And then he goes, yet. And he goes back and forth between the cry of anguish and a song of praise. And he ends on the song of praise for half the chapter.
Wow.
And that's important to do. Because how you land is how you end up feeling for a while.
That's good. That's right.
So handling that disappointment with God, it is absolutely biblical, spiritual, emotional, psychological, to tell God all about it.
To tell him all about it.
To the nth degree, to where you have nothing left inside of you.
That's right.
But then always remember who God is. Remember his character. Remember his understanding. Remember his track record. Remember his ability. Remember his motives.
That's right. His
But trust him.
Yeah.
And sing those praises of him.
That's right. And it doesn't have to feel good to do that.
It won't feel good to do it.
Yes. It'll just feel stubborn.
It'll feel good afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because it brings you into the light, but it'll feel counterintuitive in the moment. And I think sometimes risky. If I name God's goodness, if I tell him I love him, I'm vulnerable again because he's got me. He's got my heart. If I stay mad, it feels like I stay in control.
So many people are taught that it's wrong to be mad with God. So many people think it's disrespectful to be mad with God, or to even say all the words that are inside of you about being mad at him. And how can I be mad at him? All his stuff is good for me. How can I possibly be mad for him? And it's guilt-inducing.
Isn't it?
But I don't know. I don't find that that's biblical.
It's Western. I don't know that it's biblical.
Yeah. Well, we've solved all of the world's problems today.
I can just take the rest of the day off.
There is another book that I would love to just mention before we end, and it's one that I read a long time ago when I was still going through the very early parts of coming back to my faith. And it's called Disappointment with God by Philip Yancey. And it's a little known book, but it's very, very good. And he's one of my favorite Christian authors. So if you want to read more into this, then I certainly recommend Disappointment with God by Philip Yancey. And there's another one called Where is God When It Hurts? And The Gift of Pain. All three of those really go towards a lot of this topic.
I'll throw one in, Shattered Dreams by Larry Crabb.
Yes, absolutely.
He brought a slant, I think, to the story, how we talk about our inner world and how God intersects. I think he was a forerunner in that. I feel really grateful. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me. This has been super fun. I always have a good time with you, cuz.
Likewise. It's always the highlight of our trip when we see you. So thank you so much.
See you soon.
Thanks so much for joining us on this side of the couch today. If you think it's been worth your time and energy, please like and subscribe and share it and tell your closest 10,000 friends. If this show has revealed that you could benefit from counseling, then the next step is certainly finding the right counselor for you. If you're in Texas, the Rush Creek Counseling Center is ready for you. Give us a call at 817-704-6991 or visit our website at rushcreekcounseling.org. That's Rush, R-U-S-H, Creek, C-R-E-E-K, counseling.org. If you are outside of Texas, I still encourage you to seek out a counselor and step onto that path of healing. Now go have an awesome day.